I've been getting a lot of email lately about what is the real name of God. And it's very interesting. Um, there are some people who are quoting the I Am discourses and saying I Am is actually God's name. And what I've been saying is that I Am is an activity. It's something that happens when you say I am. And you should say that in your native language, whatever triggers God within you. So because I was born in America, I say I am. I'm used to, from the time I was a child, saying I am going to do this, I am going to create that, I am going to accomplish this. So when I say I am, it triggers the divine God consciousness, which is omniscient and omnipresent and omnipotent, to come through me and be released into action. But if I were born in France, the natural thing would be to say je suis. In Germany, it would be ich bin. So it's the language that you grew up with or that is the most natural to you that calls God forth. Now, I know that there is an I Am discourse given in 1932, apparently by Saint Germain, although my teacher Pearl said frequently Godfrey Ray King, who gave the discourses, would make his own comments toward the beginning or end of a discourse after the master had left, and the stenographer who was writing down the discourse would write it down as though that was Saint Germain speaking or the particular master speaking. So when Saint Germain said not to use the expression Om or Om Mani Padme Hum, this was at the end of a discourse in 1932, and it's quite possible that that was Godfrey himself speaking. It's at the end of a discourse, and frequently Godfrey would continue speaking to answer the questions of students that had been addressed to him earlier in the week. He would use the end of the discourse to answer those questions. And they were not recording them then. This was a stenographer writing them down. So when the notes came out, they were presented as coming from a particular master, not Godfrey's own comments. So that's something to keep in mind. But regardless, we have to keep in mind that Saint Germain in 1932 used the students of the I Am activity to release a certain energy and consciousness to America and the world, and to bring the term I am into full use and acceptance. Prior to that, there were a few comments in the Bible, and in the New Testament you have some affirmations of Jesus saying I am, but hardly anyone used that as an affirmation or an expression to call forth divinity. So we have to be tremendously grateful to Saint Germain and to Godfrey for bringing this forth. So this is really the key that unlocks your divine potential. When you say I am, in whatever your native language is, you are calling God forth, and you can feel it. You just try it. I am. So where does this actually come from? In the divine consciousness which existed before creation, God was in what we call the void or the consciousness beyond space and time. Space and time was a creation of duality, of God coming forth out of the great silence, out of the oneness. And this is well known in India and has been written about in the Vedas and the Upanishads for thousands of years. Even 10, 12,000 years ago, they were writing about this. So as God came forth out of the silence, out of meditation, if you want, or what they call in some places in India, the sleep of God, which lasted millions of years. They talk about a day of God and a night of God, and these cycles are millions of years. So creation comes forth, then creation dissolves, then creation comes forth again. So as consciousness came out of the stillness, out of the silence, a sound came forth. And that sound was Om. Now, the word Om that we say is only a crude approximation of the actual sound. It's more like a symbol of the sound. I'm going to play the sound of the tambura, which is an Indian instrument. And that makes a sound somewhat similar to Om. It's more like something like that. Again, you cannot duplicate it, but yogis hear this in meditation. As people start to enter the void, they hear that sound, and that sound has been given the label Om. In India, it's called the pranava, the primordial sound. So as you enter God consciousness, you hear that sound. However, most of us, probably most that are listening or watching this video, are working on mastery. That means being conscious in the 3D world, being in relationship, raising families, having work to do to help other people, developing mastery and compassion. So we come out of that silence and try to bring that consciousness through into daily life. And saying I am brings that through. So first existed the cosmic Om. And out of that came the Sanskrit alphabet. These again are primordial sounds that every child makes around the world, regardless of language. These are sounds like ah, oo, e, ow, ah, gaga, kaka, mama, papa. These are primordial sounds that parents do not teach their children. They make them automatically because the child is tuning in to these primordial sounds. So in Sanskrit, they organized these sounds and they did affirmations with them. And that is the origin of the mantra. These mantras are not just to experience God consciousness, but to bring it forth into every action. There's a mantra for taking a bath, mantra for cooking, a mantra for abundance, mantras for wisdom, happiness, the power of God. So, as you do these mantras, which are basically affirmations, but in Sanskrit, you're calling God into action. This is something that has been practiced in India for tens of thousands of years. So Saint Germain, in his great wisdom, wanted to give these teachings to the West in a simple form that we could apply. So he translated these Sanskrit affirmations into English. So in Sanskrit, you would say, I am the presence of God, as Aham Brahmasmi, or I am Brahman. Actually, Aham is I am. And this has been known in India for ages. And so to say that we have to say that in English is ridiculous. These teachings existed prior to the English language. The English language is not a pure language that just you fell out of the sky. It's a mixture of Proto-Indo-European, the Germanic languages, Scandinavian, French, the Romance languages, that has evolved and is continuing to evolve over time. So this is not a language that the masters or divine beings were speaking 100,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago. They were speaking Sanskrit. So even there's words in the English language from Sanskrit. So it's appropriate to say these mantras in English to bring forth the divine creation. And it's helpful to know that when you say I, that is taking you back up into that consciousness. That is like Father, Fire, Spirit, and Will. That's this current. When you say am, that's coming forth from the heart. That's the divine feminine, the love principle that brings everything into creation. There is nothing that exists on this earth that is not, that we can see and put a name on, that is not the product of the Divine Mother and Divine Father in action. So if we want to bring something into creation, or want to develop a quality within ourselves, like compassion, we can say, I am compassion. And to feel that and to meditate on it. Or I am the light of the world, blessing all creation. And feel that come forth. So when Saint Germain gave these teachings in the 1930s, he selected a group of people around Godfrey Ray King that would learn these teachings and apply them. So that is why, in my opinion, and Saint Germain, please correct me, that he gave these teachings with the request that people not mix this with the Eastern teachings. That he wanted people to be a focus of the I am teachings, the I am consciousness, to be God in action, not to be passive and just sit in meditation and try to achieve oneness. That this was a time during the Great Depression, economically as well as emotionally, when he wanted people to get busy, take responsibility for their own lives, take responsibility for improving society, and to call God into action in daily life, not to sit in the oneness and experience bliss and to say, I don't care what happens to the rest of the world, I'm in bliss, I'm in God consciousness. There are many people today practicing the Advaita teachings who try to make the focus, again, returning to that oneness, which is beautiful. I'm not knocking that. But I'm saying if you want to achieve mastery, just being in the oneness will not do it. There are many yogis alive today who were enlightened beings in past lives that realized they had not achieved mastery over duality. And they have come forth in this lifetime to be parents, to be in relationship, to have jobs, and learn to develop compassion for other people. It's not enough just to say, hey, I'm in God consciousness, I don't care what happens to others or to the world. That's not why we're here. We were in God consciousness before we were born. We came from the celestial realms. And we came here for a reason, and it's my belief that that is to achieve mastery, and to achieve mastery with compassion for others, to learn what it is like not to have access to that perfection at every moment. Of course, we do have access, but very few manifest that perfection. So what I believe and what I've been guided to by Saint Germain is to bring more of these teachings of the Far East, especially Tibet, to the West now in a way that is simple, easy to understand, because there is tremendous wisdom, power, and love in those teachings. So there should not be this confusion over whether we should say I am is the name of God, or Om, or Allah, or Krishna, or Yahweh, or Jehovah, whatever. There's probably thousands of names. Wakantanka, Native American. It is not the name that is important. So I think of the example of the ocean. 1,000 people could show up on the shore of the ocean with different containers. I might show up with a glass that's clear and looks like this. Someone else might show up with a glass like this. Or there's many shapes, thousands of shapes, colors, and sizes. Each one dips into the ocean and says, this is the ocean, this is what it looks like. They go home and they say, I went to the ocean and I brought it back with me, and this is what it looks like. The ocean looks like this. But then the neighbors, after a while, after that becomes a religion, the other people, their teacher says, no, I went to the ocean, it looks like this. So I think it's better if we don't get caught up in these names and to appreciate what each path has to offer. So there is a time and a place to chant Om. Again, Om is not the real thing, it's a symbol for it, but it does invoke that. And there is a time to say I am also. So I think if each person prays within what is appropriate for me at this time, they will be shown. And not to judge others for what practice they are doing. They all have their place. So I hope this has been of help to you. And are there any further questions from people in the audience?